Hello and welcome back to Community Connection. I'm Iowa City Mayor Bruce Teague. Iowa City Transit is set to see some major changes beginning in August, and we want to make sure that riders are aware of the improvements being made. As vital as transit is to our community, these decisions were made only after completing a comprehensive study on how to make our system more convenient and reliable. Today I'm joined by Transportation Director Daria Nagel-Gamm to discuss those improvements. Thank you so much for joining me today. Super excited to talk about the transit system that's going to be changing in Iowa City. Can you tell us a little bit about the goals and timeline of the Iowa City Transit Study?
Sure. So in terms of the goals, really the mission for the study was to create a transit system that's better, that provides better service for those that rely on it, and make it an easier choice for others. So over the last 2 years, we have been working through the Iowa City Area Transit Study in partnership with the City of Coralville and CAN Bus. And we had a couple objectives in mind. First is determine how we can best reallocate our existing resources that we have today. So our funding, our staffing, our buses, to better meet the needs of today. And the second objective was really to determine what sort of enhancements could we do to the system, to the transit system, to further improve the community mobility if additional funding was secured. So it's really, what are the unmet needs of the community? A few sub-goals really are ultimately to provide faster, more frequent, and more reliable service to the community. This is what we've heard the community asking for loud and clear in recent years. We have a lofty goal of increasing ridership and even doubling ridership over the next 10 years. We really wanted to improve our coordination with CAN Bus and with Coralville Transit through this study, which is why we did it in a partnership. And then in terms of our climate action planning, our climate action plan actually calls for a shift to 55% of vehicle trips to more sustainable modes by 2050 in order to meet greenhouse gas emission goals. So really, this transit study is a really important first step in making transit a better choice for the whole community. And then last but not least, another goal is to just really make transit stops more accessible, more comfortable for use, and provide better information to the community, better tools, better smartphone apps. So it makes transit just easier for people to use and easier for people to understand.
Our transportation system has been a topic of conversation for a while. And so the transit study definitely started around 2019, where it kind of got into play. And here we are now, where we've had opportunity for public input. I wanted to have you tell us a little bit about how you collected that data and how you incorporated it.
Great question. So first and foremost, I would just like to say thank you to the entire Iowa City community, because this study really would not have been possible without the incredible amount of feedback that the community provided, comments, questions. And we're really thrilled with all of the people that came out to the events, who filled out online surveys, took the time to reach out to us directly. But the first phase of public outreach really did happen in the fall of 2019. And that was really geared towards finding out what's working with the system now and what we could do better, what's missing. And we held open house meetings across the metro area. We held online surveys. We did an on-bus survey of over 1,000 riders. And we had over 1,000 responses to our digital surveys. So we were really thrilled. We got a lot of great information about what's working well, what's not working well. And we're able to parlay all of that great feedback into 3 distinct transit service system potential scenarios that we presented to the public in early 2020. And then once again, we reached back out to the community and said, okay, we've got these 3 options. What do you think? And we invited them to open house meetings. We invited them to an online format where they can really take the time and kind of digest the different scenarios and what they liked and what they didn't like. And the community responded with some really incredible detailed feedback. It was not an easy survey. It required a lot of thought and careful consideration. And we got nearly 1,500 responses back to the survey, and the open house meetings were really well attended. So we're really thrilled about the public feedback, which was absolutely integral in evaluating those scenarios. And then we took all of that feedback and developed one sort of preferred transit system scenario based on everything that we heard. What are the things that the community liked the best out of the scenarios? And we tried to incorporate as many of those as we could into kind of the transit system design that we landed on and that we are going to be moving forward with on August 2nd.
Well, one thing I will say about Iowa City is that we never have to wonder what people are thinking, right? So thanks to everybody that gave feedback, because it's important. It really did inform how the transit system, the next steps for the transit system. So thanks to everybody that was a part. Now I know that there has been some fare and passes, some changes that I want to make sure that people know about. And it's already been implemented. I believe it was July 2nd. So can you tell us about that?
Sure. Yes. So we are in the implementation phase. So all those great recommendations that we got out of the study that were really developed based on what we heard from the community. We are now, after the city council approved the plan in June, we're now moving into the implementation phase. So this is the exciting part. We get to actually make the changes to the system, help make the service better. First round of changes, as you mentioned, Mayor, was to better improve our fare and transfer policy system for not only City of Iowa City Transit, but also create a system locally that works better for cross-metro area commutes. So now Coralville Transit and Iowa City Transit both have the exact same fare structure. So there's no questions about, does this pass work here? Does it work there? How are the hours different on each system? Both of us, our transit systems have the same fare structure, and you can use any passes on Iowa City Transit, Coralville passes on Iowa City Transit, and you can use Iowa City passes on Coralville Transit. We also took a real hard look at people who need transit service the most, and how can we make transit service easier and more affordable for those who need it most. Part of those changes that we rolled out at the beginning of July are that now anyone age 65 or older will ride transit for free in Iowa City. At this point, all you need to do is just show an ID with your birthday and you will be able to ride Iowa City Transit for free. Those with disabilities can also ride Iowa City Transit for free and can get a pass from our downtown parking and transportation services office. And those that either have a SEATS card or a Medicare card can also ride Iowa City Transit for free. Another group that we feel is really important that they have access to good, reliable, inexpensive transportation is the youth. So now we're really excited to announce a 50% discount for any youth who ride Iowa City Transit, whether they're paying cash at the fare box or whether they have a pass, they're going to get a 50% discount on their services. So we've been very excited. We've talked to many excited people down at the interchange about these positive changes, which are they're great for drivers, great for passengers, great for the whole metro area community. And we're hoping the goal is to make it easier for you to travel throughout the community by transit.
These are very exciting additions that have just taken place, especially when you're talking about being able to use the bus pass between Iowa City and Coralville, and for the discounted and some of the free fare that you just mentioned. Those are great opportunities for people to really utilize the system to the fullest capacity and not have the barrier of financial deficit, which is great. So super excited about that. But there are more implementation changes that are going to happen around the 2nd of August, and we really want you to tell us about this, because this is the real the big shebang that we've all been working towards.
Yes, you are correct, Mayor. These are the big changes, and this is what we've been excitingly getting the community prepared for. But on August 2nd, all of our routes, bus stops, and bus schedules will change. So this is going to be the biggest and most noticeable change to the public. And of course, there's going to be a bit of a learning curve for the community, for transit staff, and we're all in this together. And we're all going to get there, and we're all here to help the community find their routes on the new system. So. In short, there's 13 new routes. Some are brand new. Some will look very familiar, and some will look somewhat familiar and maybe have a little bit of a different twist. So it's really important for all transit riders who are accustomed to the system today to get to know the new system, and we're here to help you with that. All routes are now going to have a number and a name. So for example, if you ride the Town Crest route, which is a route that's going to stay and is very familiar to the community. There's no change to the actual route that it takes, but it will now be called the 9 Town Crest. So again, there's going to be 13 routes. The routes are going to be color-coded on all of our marketing and education materials to make the system easier to learn and to navigate. The routes, this is the most exciting part for us, but the routes are going to be the same time, the same route, no matter what the time of day or day of week. So you no longer have to look at your watch and figure out what time of day it is, because at certain times of day, the routes shift and they go different places, or you don't have to pay attention to the day of the week. On Saturday, some of the routes go to different places than they do the rest of the week. You no longer have to remember 2 different routes. The route that you ride will be the route Monday through the weekend, and no matter what time of day it is. So that will make it much easier, I think, for the public to understand the system and make it much easier to navigate. Another thing I think the public is going to notice on August 2nd is that the routes are much more focused on arterial streets. So there's less loop routes. They're more out and back on the same route, which again makes the route system more intelligible. It makes a lot more sense to people when they, you get on the bus at this location, you get off across the street. We try to do that wherever possible. But not only that, those out and back routes, they actually help speed up the routes. So, and they reduce the amount of on-bus time that you as a passenger spend on the bus. So we're really excited about that change and that way that we're going to simplify the system a bit. And then last but not least, but certainly very important, there is going to be a new bus schedule to accompany the new routes. So even say, for example, Town Crest, which is a route that will look very familiar, it's going to go to the same places. The schedule will be different. The schedule will be different for all of the bus routes. So that's those 3 things, the routes, the stops, and the schedules, are the things that everybody wants to look out for that will be changing as of August 2nd.
So routes are going to be a major thing, I think, for people to get used to, as you mentioned, right? Because we're switching a lot of the routes to arterial streets. Can you tell us how many routes we're going from, and how many will we have now? Because I think that's going to kind of drive home the importance of people really looking into what is the route that they will now be taking whenever they access the bus.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yeah, there was about 20 routes before. And then, like I said, we had evening and weekend routes. So you add, so we had a Broadway bus route, but then a Broadway evening and weekends. And you're not going to have those extra complementary routes. That's the second route that you need to learn. So really there's going to be 13 routes. So the system will be simplified in that respect. And the coverage will be very similar to the coverage of our routes before. Some areas where I would say there was very low transit ridership, you aren't going to see the transit coverage that there once was before. So that's why it's very important to tune in to the Iowa City Transit website to find out about those changes. But those routes are going to be the big change. Routes with the same name are going to maintain nearly the same, or kind of exactly the same route structure. But again, they are going to connect. The schedule is going to be different, so they'll connect differently downtown. So a route that used to be, this is a transit term, but interlined, meaning it would be one route as it comes into the interchange, and it would change to another route as it leaves the interchange. Those will all be different also. So you'll want to pay close attention to that for your transfers after August 2nd when you begin to use the new system. And all of this information is available for you to look at online on our website, which is icgov.org/transit. Our new bus schedules are available there. They're also available actually on the buses right now. So if you go to the bus schedule slots behind the driver, you can pick up the routes for the schedules for the routes that you use. We are also available to help you answer any questions you might have at 356-5151, or if email is your preferred method, shoot us an email at ictransit@iowa-city.org. And we're also going to be available, staff will be available downtown at the interchange in the days preceding and the days after the launch of the new transit system. You'll see a booth with us down there. Don't hesitate to come on over. We might have some treats, so you might want to stop by, some treats and some giveaways. But it's a great place to come and ask a question, and we're happy to help you navigate the new system and figure out the fastest way for you to get to your destination.
I'm so happy that that's going to be happening because I'm almost certain there's going to be a lot of questions with the changes. You had talked about the changes of the frequency of the schedule is going to be the same no matter which day of the week. I want to make sure that I understand and the public understand what you mean by that. So if it is a 30-minute interval or a 15-minute interval, are you saying that for that route it would always be 15 minutes?
Yeah, during that specified time of day, you are correct. So if it's 30 minutes, so we have different intervals of service during the daytime, and then evenings and weekends. The route will stay the same, however. So there won't be a different route and a different level of service, meaning the buses come at different frequencies. So for some of our routes, we have 30-minute service during the daytime. So that means from the time we start service in the morning until later in the evening, you'll have the bus will come every 30 minutes. And that's been one of, I would say that is the most requested item that we heard in the transit study is by far, almost by double, is more frequent bus service. So that's what we're trying to deliver with this new transit system. So we have set up the routes in such a way that we can increase the service level and have more buses, especially during the peak times, but also midday, because many of our buses come only hourly midday, which if you're trying to run an errand and you're working with hourly service, that's a challenge. So we're really excited that we've been able to increase the amount of service, not only during the peak times where every route, all of our routes are going to run at 30 minutes or less during the peak times. And that's a big improvement because today only about 2/3 of our routes were able to do that. And then during the off-peak, like I mentioned, which we only have 3 routes currently today that run at 30-minute service or less, and the rest of them run at hourly service. And you can imagine the challenge that is for people who don't work an 8 to 5 schedule and they need to make trips, whether work trips, other trips, shopping trips, anything like that midday. Hourly service is really a challenge. So today, only 15% of our routes midday have 30-minute or better service, and starting August 1st, over half of our routes will have 30-minute or better service. So we're really excited about being able to increase the amount of frequency across the system, and we think that's going to be, like I said, that's the number one thing we heard from the community. So we're hoping that makes transit better for those who rely on it, and again, an easier choice for the rest of the community.
And the easier choice for the rest of the community, I want to talk about just for a second, because I think the increase of the frequency will actually allow people that traditionally don't ride the bus, they may have an interest now to ride the bus. I would encourage people to get on the website and look at the routes. They might find that for them, it might even work really neat to, get on the bus now because of the frequency of the rides. Because sometimes, as you mentioned before, if you had to wait a long time, before you can travel, then it is kind of a barrier for a lot of people when they have a lot of things to do. So I would encourage people to get on and look at the bus routes. Now, I wanted to also have you note any other changes that are coming from the transit study so that we can be aware?
Sure. And like I said, these are kind of our first phases of implementation, and there's lots of great recommendations that came out of the study, and we're going to be implementing all of them over time. But another one of the most requested items definitely from the public was improved evening and weekend service. So starting on August 2nd, nearly half of our routes will run until 10 p.m. We'll have a few that run till the 9 o'clock hour, a few till 8:30. We really stretched our service as late as we possibly could in the evenings with our existing funding and our existing resources. And we're offering new evening service to the far east side, far west side, and lower Muscatine. So if evening service has been, something that's been complicated for you before, take another look. It might serve your needs better now. We also heard better service on Saturdays. So now all of our routes are going to be running on hourly service on Saturdays throughout the day, except for the East Side Loop and the Downtown Shuttle, which have not traditionally run on the weekends. So all of our routes will be running on Saturdays. So that's really, we're almost doubling the service that we provided currently, that we will be doubling our service in August. So that's really exciting. Another weekend service topic of a big discussion in the community, and one of the most requested items was certainly Sunday service. So it was the second most requested. And ultimately, the city council has given the green light for a 2-year Sunday service pilot that's going to launch likely late 2021, early 2022. And that's going to be a big change for the community. We'll have 7-day-a-week transit service with Iowa City Transit for the first time, and we're really excited about that. So stay tuned, Iowa City, it's coming. We're also working on bus stop improvements, and whether that's all the bus stops through the community or at the interchange. We're looking at accessibility, we're looking at concrete pads, solar lit bus shelters, more seating, trash cans, all those things that are just helpful to have, information, all those things that are great to have at transit stops and make them more comfortable, make them more functional. And then we're also developing proposals for a more robust low income fare program. And again, it's that trying to make transportation as accessible as possible for those that need it most. So those are a few things that are coming down the road in terms of the transit system. And another exciting thing I wanted to mention is electric buses. We're very excited. We have 4 electric buses coming. We're going to begin the transition to clean, green, quiet electric bus technology this fall. 84% of the energy that's going to be used to power these buses is renewable per Mid-American. That's where their renewable energy pledge is at right now, which is really exciting. Most of that is from wind energy. So these buses are not only going to be cleaner because they use electricity, then there's going to be reduced emissions and cleaner air, but the power they're going to be using to actually transport people in this community is going to be vastly cleaner than the majority of communities across the United States. So we're incredibly thrilled to be bringing electric bus technology on board this fall, and incredibly excited about expanding that to the future to create one of the most sustainable transit systems in the United States.
Well, I'm super excited to hear about the Sunday service. Of course, I was a part of that vote. And I know that it's going to be something that we're going to try for 2 years. But for a lot of individuals in our community, we know that they rely on the bus service, and some do work Sunday jobs. And so this may be an opportunity for them to have a cheaper option for transit. And you just talked about climate action, is what I heard, through the bus, you say it's 4 buses that we'll have right now within our on our campus of buses to choose from that will be renewable energy, which is great to hear. But overall, when we think about transit and using a bus system, it in itself really does play into that climate action. Can you tell us a little bit about how utilizing the bus plays into climate action plans that we have already in place?
Absolutely. You're absolutely spot on. Transportation is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions and climate change globally, and also here in Iowa City. So if you aren't close enough to your destination to be able to walk or bike, which of course are far and away the healthiest and cleanest forms of transportation, using public transportation is one of the most effective things that you can do to reduce your carbon footprint or reduce your family's carbon footprint. It's far and away the number one thing you can do. So and that's because car transportation accounts for about 50% of a typical American family's carbon emissions, the largest source of household emissions typically, and therefore it's the greatest potential for reduction. So as I mentioned earlier, the Climate Action Plan calls for a shift of 55% of vehicle trips to more sustainable modes, biking, walking, transit, in order to meet the community's carbon reduction goals by 2050. So it's a really important piece of the puzzle. And Iowa City Transit is thrilled to be, replacing 4 of our diesel buses with electric drivetrain technology, which will just further enhance those carbon reductions that we get as a community, that you get as a person making that choice for your family. And when Mid-American Energy, who's our energy provider, meets their 100% renewable energy goal, like I mentioned before, we'll be likely running one of the most sustainable transit systems in the United States. So we're really thrilled about that. But transit is a great option for those, especially in the community, that are really concerned about reducing your family's carbon footprint. And I encourage you to, especially with the new system, with the new transit system, the new schedules, to take another look at transit and see how you can fit it into your family's transportation needs.
Now, I know the Ford electric buses aren't here quite yet. Can you tell us when we can expect seeing them on the road?
Yes, that's a great question. So we expect that they will be delivered in October, November, and then we have some things that we need to do on our end to make them road ready. Some of our customization, if you will. So we're hoping early winter we'll see them on the road for the first time. So they will definitely look different. They will stand out. You will not be able to miss them. I promise you. You won't wonder if that's a diesel bus or an electric bus. You'll definitely be able to tell the difference. And if you happen to be at the downtown interchange when they pull in, you're going to notice how quiet they are. They are incredibly quiet compared to their diesel counterparts, incredibly cleaner. You won't be able to miss them, I promise you.
Now, a lot of the information you shared today, people can find this on the city website. Can you tell us where that's located?
Yep, you bet. So all of the information on the upcoming transit system changes or just service in general are always located at www.icgov.org/transit. And if you want to know more about the transit study itself, we do have a study website. If you're interested in the background as to how we got to this point and what are all the steps we went through, you could also check it out at icgov.org/transit study.
Now, there's another thing that people that may have an interest in learning, the transition to transit app. So tell us about that and what will that do for people?
Yeah, the Transit app is our newest smartphone app. We were an early adopter of bus service apps. We've had one for about 10 years in partnership with the University of Iowa. We've been using it locally. And we've heard from the public that they want more reliable, on-time bus arrival information. And the app we had been using was really great, had some limitations in terms of trip planning. And we transitioned over to a new app called Transit, or we refer to as the Transit app. And the Transit app is great because you no longer need to know anything about our transit system. You don't have to memorize the routes. You don't have to memorize the bus schedules. All you need to do is open up the app and it will know where you're located at. And you just tell it where you're going, not unlike when you use Google Maps to try to find driving directions or walking or biking directions to a destination. You type in a destination and it tells you which routes and which stops you should take in order to get to your destination. It has a feature too where it's called the Go feature, and it will allow you to give you a reminder when you need to leave. So if you need to get somewhere by transit in a couple hours, you can type this into your app and then set it, and it will give you a reminder before you need to walk to your transit stop. So it's really it's got a lot more features than our old app, so we're really excited about that. And we encourage everybody to download it, take it for a spin. It will be updated with the new routes, bus schedules, and stops as of August 2nd. So if you were to look at it now and for the first time, you will see today's system, and you will up until the day that we launch. Unfortunately, we can't have two of them running simultaneously, so you won't be able to use it. But if you want to figure out how to operate in the system, I encourage you to download it today. Take it for a spin, and then really on August 2nd, in theory, you would just need to have your smartphone in this app, and you're going to be able to go anywhere on our transit system, and it will give you the fastest routes to get there. And it will also offer recommendations for using the 3-agency system, for using CAMBus, for using Coralville Transit, for using all of the buses to get you where you want to go fastest. Now that everything is interchangeable, you can use your fare media on Coralville Transit. You can transfer for free. CAMBus is always free. It's always open to the public, so you can use CAMBus routes. Whatever is fastest, it's going to get you to where you need to go, is what that route or what the app is going to encourage you and educate you on. So we encourage you to take it for a spin, and I think it's going to make the transition to the new system much easier for the community.
Wow. It's like Google. You just stand there, you punch in where you want to go, and it tells you. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for joining me today, and thanks for all the hard work that you've been doing on the transit study, working with the community, listening to them. Very appreciative for all the work that you've done. Thank you so much. Are there any last words that you want to say to us before we end our time here today?
The last thing that I would say is if transit hasn't been something you considered in the past, we encourage you to try transit, to just give it a try. Like I said, download the app. pick a location, whether it's your work, whether it's a shopping trip, and give it a try. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised by how liberating it is to move around the community without having to have a car necessarily. So we would encourage the public to give it a try. And for those that have been loyal transit users for many years, thank you so much. And we're happy to do anything we can to help make the transition from this system we're using today to the new system as easy as possible. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Great. Thank you so much. And we have a new transit system coming to Iowa City August 2nd. So get ready, Iowa City. We know that overall this will really be in the best interest of our community to give people access to transit that's really usable. So thank you again.
Thank you.
That's our show for today. Again, you can learn more about our transit system and those upcoming changes by visiting icgov.org/transit. We'll see you next time on Community Connection.